You want to edit the contents of your cells in your spreadsheet? Well, this lesson is going to show you some examples of what you can do under the edit. So that's all the typical stuff that you'd expect with edit, and then also find and replace, how that works, how you can add notes to the cells, how you can actually rename the cells, how you can apply formulas. So there's a whole bunch of good stuff coming up in this lesson, and I'll be giving you some really cool examples of what you can do with the edit functionality within your Google Sheet. Go ahead and open up your Google Sheet. So right now I just have some dummy data within the sheet, and I'm going to be showing you how you can update and manipulate the contents of your sheet. So the main tab at the top here under Edit, so you've got the typical actions that you'd expect. So the undo, redo, cut, copy, paste, and paste special. So what paste special does is it gives you more options when you are pasting. So if you just want the values or the format or formula, then you can select these as what you're pasting on top of the contents of the Google spreadsheet, so contents of those cells. You also have an option to delete, so you can select what you want to delete, and then of course there's the find and replace. So these are all using the common shortcuts that you're probably already familiar with if you've used any of the other spreadsheet formats, as well as most document interactions are going to have the similar type formats for the shortcuts that we've just outlined here. So the find and the replace gives you a pop-up window. So if you want to find a certain value and what you want it to replace it with, and it gives you a selection of where you want to search. So you can search in a sheet, you can search in a specific range, or you can search across the entire spreadsheet, so all of the sheets. So if you do select a specific range, then you can specify the range of the selected data, or you can go out and make a selection of the data. So it'll give you that pop-up and gives you an opportunity to set the data range. And this is the data range here that's been selected and highlighted in the background. So this is going from sheet 1 that we're making the selection. So A1 to D3, so including all of the content within that range. Also under the find and replace, we can match the case, so making it case sensitive, match entire cell contents, search using regular expressions. So this is a really interesting one because this allows us to use regular expressions. There's more information on regular expressions in the help on Google, and I'll give you some examples of regular expressions. So regular expressions are a sequence of characters that specifies a specific search pattern. So you can really customize the search pattern that you're looking for using the regular expressions. And you can also search within formulas within the sheets. So you can make and really customize. So selecting them, you can just do a find, you can do a replace, and you can also do a replace all. So the difference between replace and replace all, replace will only replace the first instance of it. And if you do a find, it will find the first occurrence of it. And here we just did the replace of it. So we see in the background here under column B, it's replaced my last name with the character that we're adding here to replace it with. So we're just including the 1 at the end. If we do a replace all, that's going to replace on all the occurrences that are within the range. And then we can also update this, so this pop-up window isn't going to go away once we've done the replace all. We can continue to do replaces, finds, and replaces, customize the characters that we're looking for, and also what we're replacing it with, and we can make updates as needed. So once you're done with the window, you can either exit or hit done, and that will complete the find and replace option. So that's all available under the edit. There's also ways to interact with the cell content directly. So by selecting the cell content, and if you right click it, or on a Mac, if you do a control click, it'll pop up the pop-up window with the typical commands that we've just seen. So that's the copy, cut, paste, paste special. And we also have the delete, delete column, delete cells. So that will select all of the cells that we've currently selected and delete those. We can also insert cells, insert row above, insert column above, insert cells, and then how the cells are going to behave, how they're going to be shifting to accommodate the inserted content. There's also where we can show the edit history. So what that does is this gives us information on that selected content and what their edit history is. So again, down here at the bottom. And the edit history is only available if it's a single cell. So you can't select a full range and get edit history. The edit history is per cell only. There's also some options here where you can insert a comment, insert a note, and there's also some special actions that you can do with the cell where we can have conditional formatting, data validation, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on, get a link to the cell, defined named range and protected range. So we're going to be covering that in a little bit more detail later on as well. If you want to insert rows, you can select the rows or the columns in the main selection area at the side. And from here, if you were to right click or control click, you're going to get the option to insert above or insert below. So depending on how many cells you selected, you're going to be able to select that entire block. So now that I've selected 3 rows of content, I have the option to insert 3 rows above, insert 3 rows below. We have an option to delete all the rows, to clear the contents of the rows. We can also hide and resize the rows. So once we've selected that full range, then we can insert or we can delete as needed. If we do an insert, what it's going to do is it's going to insert 3 brand new empty rows that we've just inserted below. And then we can select that content if needed. So if we want to copy it, we can go and we can paste that block of content once again into the cells. If we select a block of cells that already is content and we press paste, that's going to overwrite all of the selected cells in the range. If we're not selecting a similar range and we try to do a paste, so for this case, let's select all of this and do a copy, and we're only going to select this as where we're pasting. And what's going to happen is, even though we only selected the starting point, it's going to take the starting top right-hand cell and overwrite all of the existing cells with the copied content. So keep that in mind, that when you are selecting a range, it's going to copy that entire selected range. And with the paste special, so if you want the values only, you're going to get something like this, where it's just going to be posting the values only. So there actually wasn't any formatting, but you can select the cells and you can apply some styling to those cells. And then when we make a selection of those and do a copy, let's do a paste special and do the values only. So it's going to remove out that formatting that we just added in. And if we do the format only, it's going to apply that format only to the paste. So that means that we can select existing content and do a format only, and now we'll just apply that format to the existing content. So notice it didn't overwrite the values, it just kept the formatting that we were using with the selected content. In addition, for the paste special, so we can do conditional formatting only and data validation only. So this could be a little bit more about that later on. There's also transposed, which allows you to paste that content as transposed, where the rows become columns and the columns become rows of data. So that will give you this type of output when we've got the selection. So let's select that one more time and we'll select A. So do a copy and then go back down where we've got some empty space starting at row number 24, and we're going to do a transposed. So it will provide that selected cell data across all of the available content, so all the way up to the last available column. So it uses the same value and it transposes the row values into the column values. And you can see that a little bit better when you are just using the one cell, but before I had multiple rows selected, and the result was that it would loop through and it would paste all of the rows of content, and then it would start again, paste the next set of rows of content until it ran out of space for posting it within the current available number of columns. Also on paste special, so you can do column width only. So if you had a specific column width that you had selected, and let me just adjust the column width on these. So make a copy, and then let's do paste special and column width only. So what happened is it copied the column width from A and B and copied it onto C and D. Because starting at C, and we also had column B copied. So it allowed us to essentially copy those widths to the new columns. And also there's all except borders. So if you do have borders added into your contents, we can select that, and typically it will copy the borders. But if we don't want the borders, we just want everything but the borders, then we can select it that way. So if we do a paste there, notice it does keep the borders. Let's do a paste and do all except borders. And in this case, it pasted everything that we had except for the borders. So there are some options to how you can paste and what the results of those pastes are going to be. And just as we saw when we want to insert number of columns or rows, we can select it and we can insert the rows. We can do the same thing for columns. So if we've copied and we want to insert columns, once we select, so right now I've copied 2 columns, so I have an option to insert 2 columns to the left or 2 columns to the right. I can also delete the selected range. I can clear the contents. I can hide the columns. I can also resize the columns. So if I resize the columns, it will give me 2 options. I can either set the column width by pixels, or I can allow it to fit the data. And fitting the data will resize it to the largest cell data, the widest cell data, and it'll use that as the width for the other cells so that everything matches with the widest cell data that you can see the entire contents. So if we did have within a cell a whole bunch of values, we can't see those values unless we can click on the cell. But if we do a resize column and fit data, that's going to make the column width really large so that we can see all of the data within the one view. You can also resize columns at the top where you can drag and drop the column widths. So if we want to select all of these columns and we want them all to be matching width, whatever ones I've selected, it's going to apply that same width across all of them. So if I want to resize these selected columns and I resize them smaller, it's going to get applied to all of the columns. If you want to select columns, you can hold the shift down and select a full block of columns. If I want to select ones that are not next to the ones that are already selected, I can do that with I can do that by hitting the column and hold it while I'm holding Command down on my keyboard, and that allows me to select individual columns. And now I've got all of these as the selected range. So if I make any adjustments or resizes, that's going to get applied to all of the selected values. Also, when I make a selection of those, it's going to apply that to all of the available columns. So if I do a resize of the column to fit to the data, it will automatically resize them accordingly. And the same goes for the rows as well. So I can select multiple rows, and all of the selected rows, if I drag and if I resize the row size, that will be reflected across all of the available rows. I can always undo that and redo actions by using either the keyboard shortcuts or going under the edit menu to undo and redo. So if we select an individual cell, we already saw that we can show the edit history. So that gives us what we've done and all of the history that has been associated with that cell of data. We can also delete it. We can add in a comment. So a comment is going to look like this, where it adds the comment into that particular cell. And once the comment is added, you're going to see it within the comments. If you open up the comments, it'll show you the comments that are for the entire document. And if you want to see comments for this particular cell, you can either hover over it or you can select it and it'll highlight it within the comments area. And that gives others an opportunity to reply or add to comments, and also mark the comments as resolved within the discussion area. I'm just going to mark this as resolved. Once you do, it will disappear and it's no longer going to highlight it as an active comment. There's also, you can insert a note. So the notes are going to be showing up as a black triangle in the top corner of the cell. If you hover over them, you can see the notes that are listed for those cells. And then you can always select that and update, add to the note. And if you want to get rid of it, then you can select it. And you've got an option now to delete notes. So once there are some notes, then you have an option to delete the notes. If you delete the notes, that's going to remove out the notes from the cell of that. And if you want to add in new notes, then you can right click again or control click and start typing in new notes. And this is only for the cell itself. So others that are using it, or if you're using it and you want to make specific note on the value that's contained within the cell, then you can do it this way, where you can add it as a note into the cell. And if we want to use formulas, I'll give you a quick example, and there's a lot you can do with formulas. We're going to be covering it in more detail later on. So let's say I want to add column E and column F. I could go over to G. This is where I want to have the result. And in the top bar that's empty here, just to the right of fx, you just start by hitting an equal sign. And then you need to use and select the range that you want to apply this formula to. And then once you hit enter, that's going to run the formula. So we didn't actually say what we wanted to do with E and F. So there's no formula that has been, or there's no action that's been associated with this formula. So when you select and you start typing, you're going to see within the drop down the formula. So if I want to add those together, then I would type in what I want to do with the formula. So in this case, I want to do a sum. It's going to ask for some parameters. I'm going to need two values at least in order to formulate a sum. So the first value is coming from E, and then add that together. And the second value from F. And I can also hard code a value. So if I want to add 100 to both of those values, I could do that as well. Close the rounded brackets, and this is going to give me the result of the formula. If I want to apply the same formula to the cells below, I can always drag, and whenever I select the cell, I get a blue box, and I've got a square here in the bottom right hand corner. So if I select and hold the click button down, that allows me to drag and apply the same formula to the other cells that I've just dragged it to. And when I select the cell, if it does have a formula, it's going to show the formula in the top bar. If not, it's just going to show the contents. So in this case, it's just string contents that are sitting within the cell. I also have indicators of what cell I'm on. So right now it's D8, so column D, row number 8. You see that here within the name box. I can apply a new name to this and hit enter. So now when I go on top of that particular cell, now it's going to be referred to as new name. So you can provide specific names for each of those, and then you can use the named box within the formulas as well. I'll show you a little bit more about that later on.